What's going on, everybody? What's up, Brody? I'm looking at the title here, NFL Week 12 Final Thoughts, which is strange because Bobby and I haven't even shared my first thoughts yet with anybody. I got to go through all my first thoughts, my middle thoughts, and my final thoughts all in like 45 minutes.
Well, I mean, I can edit. Usually I edit it and throw a different title up there.
No, I'm just kidding. It's totally
But I mean, I haven't got to that yet.
Well, but there's a point here. I mean, it's a weird week because there were two kind of separate, distinct slates, and the way content works, most of the weeks they kind of build up into the Sunday slate a little early, look Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, whatever. But now because of the break and Thanksgiving, it hasn't been the same like flow of information, so it hasn't been the same, people. I don't know. Like usually during the course of an NFL content week, they get on the stuff, they get off the stuff, and they kind of whatever. It seems though people just scrambled the last like couple of days to get their stuff together, which makes it kind of an interesting thing. Bobby, I saw that I was mentioning to Rody just now that he put up here NFL Week 12 final thoughts, and it's kind of I mean it's weird. We haven't even talked about the slate at all yet, so it's
which is probably honestly for this week it may not have been for the worst thing. We would have speculated on the Rachaad White being unhealthy if he when he was announced questionable yesterday, which is pretty weird the day before to be announced questionable. And we would have, if I had done my thing yesterday, I would have been talking up Chase Edmonds as the play of the day.
Right.
Which, by the way, if you're playing large field tournaments, I actually think that's like I would play if I was scripting out today. I would script in like 5% of Chase Edmonds just because that is there is a chance that there's actually more to it than maybe meets the eye with White. I don't know yet. I'm going to go with the coaches saying that it was just precautionary, but like it is a little weird the day before. We're not used to that anyway. But yeah, it is, and also it's a very strange week. Sheets, have you noticed? Like this is probably one of the uglier slates, which makes it very easy for me to condense what I want to do, especially because people are going to have a hard time doing it. And we'll get into what we like and everything like that. But I have that's my take on these kind of slates. I just don't think, I think this is going to be one of the lowest scoring main slates of the year, even though it's 11 games instead of 10. It's only 10. It's 10 games. That's just my take, is that I think it's going to be a lower scoring slate, and I'm okay with taking guys at positions and hoping for my 10 to 15 fantasy points as receivers and not necessarily trying JM to win. A shout out to JM. I love the guy. He always used to say that, make sure every player on your team can get 20 fantasy points. Don't play a guy if he's going to get, if he really is capped out at like 10 to 15 in general, or if you feel like he is. And I just think this is the kind of slate where you can totally attack it and take the low points at pretty much all positions if it gets you the spend ups that I think are pretty desirable today. So that's sort of my overall look. Ro, do you have any outlook overall before we get into positions?
No, that's a good point. I like that. Make sure your guys can get you like upside. You were playing for bigger scores, 20 points at least. You don't want to play a guy that's going to get you 7 points, if even 7.
But this week, my wager would be that if someone does win not the millionaire necessarily, but I think that there will be someone sub 10 points, maybe in the millionaire actually. Yeah, I guess I'll go with that one.
Oh, you think? Okay, yeah, with someone 10 points. Yeah.
I think there's a chance today more than most days, just because I think it's hard and it's really hard to get in the stacks that you want, or the stack that I want. So, Sheets, any other overall things before we ask you to start mentioning the quarterbacks you like?
Yeah, so it's interesting. You mentioned the Rachaad White thing. My comment, it doesn't necessarily have something to do with Rachaad White, but more towards a take that I was kind of turned on to, and then because I thought there would be injury news that was going to be really important, and then it turns out that the injury news didn't pan out the way I thought, but yet the fact that I got to think about that spot a little bit more made me focus a little bit more, and I am going to get to it anyway. So it's sort of like you mentioned the Chase Edmonds thing. Like you didn't even think about Chase Edmonds until like 2 days ago, and now like first Chase Edmonds going to be the play of the day. Now all of a sudden, like, well, but you know what? Maybe he's not the worst play anyway. So just those little things. So there is one kind of not overall take, but one main take that we'll get to, I guess, when we get to quarterback, I suppose.
Yeah, let's get to it. So why don't we have you start off with quarterbacks, and then we'll go to Rody and then me.
I guess I'll do kind of a slate overview too. I mean, there seem to be like 5 games. I mean that just kind of dominate the totals at least. Maybe 4. I mean, it depends on what you think about this. And there's a lot of games that, not a lot of games, but a good handful of games with just almost X out possibilities. So you have to figure out, how you want to approach that, because it isn't only a 10-game slate. So if you can get one of those kind of like off the board things to work, like let's say that New England and Giants turn into some freaking dumpster fire with both teams giving up on defense and that game going off. I mean, you're going to win billions. Not to say that you have to play that, but that's kind of the way the slate shapes up. So with respect to quarterback, I was originally going to be very, very concentrated. I was going to go with the very standard, the Trevor Lawrence, Gardner Minshew from that game, Jalen Hurts, and what's his name from the Josh Allen from that game, the Baker Mayfield even from the Tampa game. But this is where I really want to get overweight right now, and it's kind of like a take right off the bat. One of the injury news that was throughout the course of the week was that Max Crosby was going to be out for the Raiders. Okay. And that to me was shaping up to be an incredibly huge deal, because Casey was coming off like some pretty miserable performances. And it seemed to be a decent spot to get right against the Raiders. And then with Max Crosby maybe being out, I'm like, okay, I am going to be all into this shit. You know what I mean? So I never played Mahomes. And then the problem is I'd have to worry about where to throw what receivers to go throw to. Then it turns out that Max Crosby, it says he's going to play, but I got to thinking about it even more, and I kind of don't care. I really want to get really overweight on Mahomes. I mean, we're going to get to receivers later, but two kind of like sort of sneaky things that happened was that both Kadarius Toney and Mecole Hardman are out. So all of a sudden, I know the receivers I'm throwing into. So I'm going to get what could be a low-owned or lower-owned at least Mahomes in a spot which he's dying to get right. And now I know where I'm getting my receivers. I'm going to get really, really overweight on Mahomes, even relative to all those other guys I mentioned.
Just to add and maybe subtract to what you just said about that game, I love the call, by the way. I think that's awesome. They still do have six receivers that they've got, which is annoying because they'll throw these guys in there. We've seen it, but I agree that I think the Mahomes stack is going to be very low owned, even though I think you have pieces. But the one name that you didn't mention was Jerick McKinnon is also out.
Right. Well, that's what's going to happen is that's going to put a lot of ownership. Pacheco is what I'm saying. Yeah.
Exactly. And by the way, again, another super large field play would be playing Clyde Edwards-Helaire. You know what I mean? He's 4K, just to get a little different. I mean, this is one of those kind of slates where I think you can get a little bit weird.
Oh, I'm playing the afternoon slate today, and he's going to get in there. And if I'm not doing well in my main slate, I'm going to probably do something like that.
Yeah, and just before we get into positions, just that's the way I look at this slate is boy, I can do whatever I want in the afternoon if I get my morning pieces right. You know what I mean?
Right.
And I really have a lot more interest in the afternoon games than I do the morning game. So. That's sort of just the overall. But let's get into quarterback sheets. You mentioned Mahomes. I love the call. I think it's very interesting. And you've got Watson, and you could play him with cheap. You could take a shot with Sky Moore, which always fails us, and MVS if he can actually catch the ball. Maybe he's a good play. But there's still question marks. But I love the idea of mixing and matching those guys and getting in there. What do you got at quarterback those sheets overall, other than Mahomes?
Yeah. So Trevor Lawrence, Gardner Minshew, as I mentioned, Jalen Hurts, Baker Mayfield, all from those games. And I guess I'm a little over the field on Desmond Ridder. I guess that's my hoodoo I'll throw.
Unfortunately, shoot, I was really hoping you weren't going to say that because he is currently one of my biggest stones quarterbacks right now, which makes me feel kind of weird. All right, so Sheets is going up and down at quarterback. Rody, what are you doing at quarterback? And then I'll go.
Yeah, I think in my playbook I call out Desmond Ridder too. I think he's going to be my big buy-in too this week.
Oh, let's go!
Oh my God, the Ridder team. Here we are.
That stacks is cheap. It makes it work. They're committed to him. They made an announcement they're going to start him the rest of the year, whatever. Right? They said rest of the year.
Yeah, that's what they said. Now Arthur Smith is a known liar, but still,
it's not like we got to worry about him. Maybe like Mac Jones today is playing as well, but anytime they could pull out Mac Jones, you know what I mean? So
right,
I feel a little bit better with Ridder and his price. I like Gardner Minshew at 5-1 as well. I like Baker Mayfield at 5-5. I'm getting to some him. I kind of like that dome game, the Colts game, stacking it up. I like Trevor Lawrence, another dome game for Houston. That his stacking pieces are really cheap. The only problem I have with Mahomes and Hurts is their price. like I don't find. I mean, I have some value pieces today when we talk about them later, but like I feel like I'm really having a hard time getting those guys in. But I think I really feel like I need more Kelsey. I'm not getting a lot of Kelsey with Mahomes, but like you said, there's a lot of cheap stacking partners with him, so maybe I'll get to a little bit more Mahomes. I like a little bit of Stafford. And that's kind of where I'm at. Ritter's kind of my main guy, and then those other cheaper guys that I really like in those dome games. So
That's not. I like this because you guys didn't mention the one guy who's by far my highest owned quarterback on both sites. I will be basically in on this. I'm going to stick by this take all the way, and I think he's going to be 5 to 7% owned. I will play Josh Allen absolutely everywhere. I have on DraftKings I only have 20%, but I have like 30% of my salary allocated to him. And I have 2 big FanDuel lineups and like 4 small ones. He's in one of my 2 big ones and 3 of the 4 smaller ones. So he's basically 45% of my lineups are sort of assigned to Josh Allen. I think you can go a lot of different ways with the stack. And I just want to point this out because I'm going to talk about this a lot today. You can play the Shakir as a cheapo. Gabe Davis will be completely forgotten about. The bizarre thing is, so you have the number 1 matchup for wide receivers in all of football, and Stephon Diggs is going to be sub 10% owned. I'm in, and look, you're going to have to make some uncomfortable plays or use the value you have elsewhere to get a Brown and a Diggs together. Maybe get some Diggs and Smith, maybe get some Davis and Brown, maybe do it that way to try and make it a little more manageable salary wise. But those are the main ones for me. And then I have Ritter and Mayfield next. We'll get into it at things. I think there's a lot of ways to stack the Tampa Bay Indy game. I do have some Minshew as well, but I prefer the Baker side of it. It's more natural with Minshew because I like running Rachaad White. I do not like. Well, I guess I'll wait for running back to talk about it. But the only place I'm going to play Jonathan Taylor is in my one. I have one set of lineups where I'm going to play him. He's going to end up like 6 or 7% owned for me, maybe a little lower, because I just think we've seen this so many times. Why are we taking running backs against teams that literally are pass funnel defenses as the chalk play on the slate? And anyway, so I like the idea of those stacks with Baker a little bit differently. Then I'm just sprinkling in Minshew, Lawrence. Sorry, I've got all my ownerships here. Minshew, Lawrence. Why does it keep doing this? Stafford, Mahomes, Stroud, and Murray. But I think I'd like to get a little more Stafford, and I think I'd like to get a little more Mahomes. One guy I did consider, and I know this sounds really stupid. If we're going to play Desmond Ritter, thinking about Tommy DeVito is probably not the worst idea in the world. The guy just put up 22 fantasy points the other day. Okay. And New England's defense, this is not the same New England defense. You do have rushing upside with him. There's a path where Tommy DeVito can get something going, and you've got cheap options on the other side. You've got cheap options to pair him with. Now they're not good options, but if you play him with Wandale and run it back with whatever, any Demario Douglas or Juju, then you can play AJ Brown and Stephon Diggs together. So that's the way or you could play Kelsey at tight end, which is really hard to get to today. So I kind of like the idea of getting to some of that. Brody, why don't you start off at running back?
Yeah. Oh, sorry. I was working on getting another Mahomes stack in there. Yeah, running back is a tough one. Like you said, Taylor's going to be really chalky today, super chalky. Like, why are we playing that? I'm kind of going to be lower on him. I don't mind Barkley, a big running back. I know it's expensive, but I'm stacking cheap stacks. I like that Atlanta New Orleans game. So Alvin Kamara is kind of a run back in my Ritter stacks. White I do like against the Colts as well. He's getting a little bit of ownership. Worried about the injury a little bit, but other guys I'm getting to are like Pacheco. No McKinnon in that game, but he's getting more ownership now. So, trying to find a cheaper, lower ownership guy. Stevenson's a little bit lower owned, but still around the 14%. I like him. Derrick Henry today at 6,400. I like that. James Conner at 5,900. Kyrene Williams at 6,600 is kind of a lower owned, single digits, hopefully, in that Arizona Dome game that I kind of like today. And don't really, I have a little bit of Ford, a little bit of Warren as well. I like Warren as well at 5-4 today, 2 in that game. So those are kind of the guys I'm going. Maybe a little Bijan in that Atlanta New Orleans game as well. And I'm getting to A guy I'm trying to get a little bit more of is maybe DeAndre Swift at 5%. I like him a little bit. Trying to get a little bit more exposure to that game. I know, trying to find a few pieces like Devontae Smith or Swift or something like that. So sorry, receiver. We'll get to that later.
No, but I appreciate the full stuff. I'm like I have the most uncomfortable amount. So right now, and look, it's going to be less than this when the slate kicks off. But I have 40% of Derrick Henry. It's almost Dehember. And this guy has run for a total of like 70 yards in his last 3 games. I don't even know if they're like, it's just such a good spot. You have the worst ranked defense in all of football against the run. It's that time of year for Derrick Henry. I'm just looking right now at his projected ownership, somewhere in the teens. I just am way overweight on that. I'm probably going to lessen my ownership because that feels a little uncomfortable. Jaylen Warren is my second highest running back, which is a little also uncomfortable, but I also need the value if I'm going to play so much of that other game, the Philly game. So I think that an interesting pivot off of Warren is just going right back to Najee Harris and just hoping that things slide his way. I think he's a really interesting pivot off of Warren, who I think is getting under the projections are too low, I think, on what his ownership will be. I think he'll be higher owned than he's projected to, especially in higher buy-ins. Because I do think a lot of people are going to I think a lot of sharp people will try to do that Philly thing, and you really do need value. Anyway, DeAndre Swift next, then Bijan Robinson, then Pacheco, then Etienne, then Rachaad White, then Jerome Ford, then Najee Harris, then Jonathan Taylor and Kieran Williams, a little bit of Connor and Mixon to, like 3 to 4%, but that's pretty much it. How about you, Shoots?
Yeah, I don't know if I want to start a holy war here, but
let's do it.
Yeah, I think Derrick Henry's an atrocious play. I think he's a sucker bet. I think it's a combination of just terrible narrative about the thing about Dehember and I think he's been in a legit timeshare the whole season, and I don't think there's any reason why this should be any different. It seems to be the super stupid fake sharp play of the week, and I'm just not the slightest bit interested.
I love to hear you say it. First of all, I love disagreements. I think this is the greatest part of this thing, and I totally understand where you're coming from. I also want to point out the last time you thought it was a terrible thing was the Chargers and Lions game, which almost won the million.
That's correct.
So I'm going to still stick with my Henry ownership, even though
that is correct. The other thing, the holy war thing, I'm not too interested in forcing out Jonathan Taylor. He just projects too much better than everybody else. And I know that the funnel and all this stuff, I got to rely on the numbers to some degree. So I'm not forcing him out. I'm going to get a bunch of him. I'm not forcing him in. It's just going to be what it is. Here's a couple of, I guess, questions I have. One is I'm trying to find running backs from games that I know we're not going to have a timeshare that have a reasonable total and might not be that highly owned. So I think Pacheco is going to be pretty highly owned, especially with what's his name out. You have a perfect game script and all this stuff. I mean, he could legitimately get 200 yards in this game, and that's the type of thing I don't think I would feel like fading. If you want to know the truth, but the two guys I want to bring up is one is a bad total game, and that would be Ramondre Stevenson. I mean, I just know that he's just the guy over there. The one that I want to go back to is the Kyren Williams. Okay. Because the Rams like to give a guy the work. When he was there, he got all the work, and it's a game where it's got just as good of a total, if not better, than anything else on the slate. And against a good matchup, he projects well. I think he's going to be higher owned than single digits at the end of the day, but I still think that he just kind of fits the bill. And when somebody made a good point, like when he was announced he was coming back, like they released Darrell Williams in like 7 minutes. Okay, like this is Kyren Williams' deal as far as I'm concerned. So I really like that a lot. And if I don't get at least 20% of him, I'm gonna be busting that one up a little bit. And two other, I don't know if you guys mentioned Saquon Barkley, but he's healthy. He's getting the work. It's a competitive game, and weather's decent over here. So I definitely probably get a little over on him. So those would be my comments, is that I'm probably not going to play Derrick Henry. I want to up my exposure on Kyren Williams. I'm not as inclined to fade the Taylor Pacheco chalk as some people might be. And the Rashad White. I mean, I don't know. I'll just probably get what I get of him. I'll get what I get and don't get upset. But I guess Kyren Williams would be my kind of like overweight stance, I suppose.
I like it. I think that makes some sense. I think it's interesting if you just compare like Kyren Williams and let's say Derrick Henry because they're the same price base. But Kyren Williams is a little more expensive, which also is like just like kind of jarring to look at, even though it makes perfect sense. I think you're probably right about him getting the work share. The only thing I would caution people is I've seen this Arizona and LA matchup so many times, and I think Cooper Kupp is a phenomenal play. So we'll get into that.
We'll get there, yeah.
Yeah. And by the way, that game could have enough fantasy goodness to where you could just play those two guys and not even have to work, not even in a stack, just play those two guys. All right. So speaking of which, I guess that's my turn to start off at wide receiver. Let me just get my exposures here real quick. Why is it not good? There we go. All right. So my wide receiver exposures for the main slate. There we go. I am struggling with this Josh Downs thing because I have him as my highest owned wide receiver, and I don't I get it. I know why. I know it's the price. I know that it's the upside. I love the matchup, all these things. Something just feels funny about it. Like this guy, he really hasn't been doing anything lately. They've definitely been going to Pittman. He's had 4 targets his last 2 games combined. And I know one was, against New England out overseas, and one was at Carolina when they were controlling the game. So you can kind of chalk some of it up to that. I think there's a ceiling there, but just feels like at this ownership, he does seem like the most obvious best play. But I don't know if that's for sure where I'm going to end up. Other than that, it's going to be the game I mentioned: Diggs, Gabe Davis, Devontae Smith, and AJ Brown, and then Cooper Kupp, then Chris Godwin, Rashid Shaheed, Shakir, Pittman, Drake London, Tank Dell. This is in order. These are all above 10%. Mike Evans, Justin Watson, Demario Douglas, and those are my 10% over 10% guys. What about you, Sheets? For
Rody can go if he wants.
Okay, Rody, go ahead.
I feel as though Rody seems to get the bottom end of the.
Well, we were rotating.
I got running. I did get running back still, so I started out there. So I gave a lot of running back takes. Okay. So,
go ahead.
I can go. It don't matter. Sheets sounds like he wants to file it up, join his coffee over there, having a good morning. I like Michael Pittman today. In that game, I know you just mentioned Downs. I like both of them. I'm getting Downs and Pittman. Cooper Kupp at 8K. I know, Tank Dell's really chalky today. I'm kind of a little bit under on that, I would say. Olave. I'm kind of getting some of these game stacks. I really like Mike Evans in that game too. That Colts game on the other side of that one. Christian Kirk 5-7. I really like today. Devontae Smith 7-1. He gets a lot more work when Goddard's out, and you've seen that last game. And we had a lot of Smith last game, and he got a lot of catches, so I like that. Drake London at 5K is a guy I really like. He's not getting any ownership either, so I think that stack's really where I want to go today. I like that a lot. Demario Douglas is a 4.4K receiver that's a value, a little chalky. I actually like a pivot to Rashid Shaheed, a big boom guy in that game, and I think you can go there at 4.3. I think he is. Yeah, he's 4.3 with a decent projection right there as well. Getting a little bit more ownership than I would want, but it's fine in that game. I like. And then Gabe Davis at 5.3, low owned if you want. Everyone's forgotten about him. Yeah, I'll let Sheets follow up with all the big names that he wants to get in.
Okay, so we'll have some fun. First of all, the non-fun is going to be like the easy ones for me, like Justin Watson,
yep.
3K, coming off like 400 targets last week with 2 other guys out, whatever. I mean, that seems pretty easy to me. And then the other guy from that game would be Rashid Rice from the receiver. Actually, the best wide receiver in that game is Travis Kelce, but we'll get to that in a minute. But let's go back to so my highest owned receiver right now is the aforementioned Drake London that you guys mentioned before. And if you guys want to win $1 million or whatever, there was a guy who I thought was going to end up being a little bit chalky, but not really, because kind of went, I don't want to say unnoticed, but I guess noticed was that Michael Thomas was out, right? So Olave and then Rashid Shaheed, but there's that other dude who can win like $1 billion for somebody. That guy that made those incredible catches, that the AT, whatever his name is, for New Orleans. What the hell is his name? A.T. Perry. Okay.
Oh, A.T. Perry, right?
Yeah. So A.T. Perry can be included in that New Orleans Atlanta kind of dumpster fire stack. I'm gonna do a little of that just for funsies, as I like to say. So aside from that, it's pretty much everything you guys mentioned. What Pittman? What else do I have here? Kirk, Downs, Watson. I have Hopkins, decent amount. Okay, so you're talking about Tank Dell. Do you guys prefer Nico Collins to Tank Dell? I guess that's an interesting question. And I heard some stuff about maybe Deontay Johnson with the new coordinator. Maybe Pittsburgh does a little bit better today. What do you guys think of like Nico Collins as opposed to Tank Dell, if that matters to you guys?
Yeah, I mean, the Collins being cheaper is kind of interesting. I actually am underweight on both those guys, and it's hard to be underweight these days. But with Pierce back, maybe they run the ball a little bit more. It's a tough. I don't care that they're statistically their numbers don't look as great. Jacksonville, I just believe their defense is a little better than people think. So I'm just taking a little bit of an underweight approach on those guys personally.
Okay.
How about you, Rody? With the Houston?
Yeah, I mean, I don't mind those guys, but I'm kind of off that game. I'd say a little bit more than you guys. So
Yeah.
All right. Who do you have more of, Bobby?
We're not on that either, by the way. So.
Bobby, you have more of Diggs, AJ Brown, or Devontae Smith, or all three of those guys?
So I'm looking at my exposures right now. I have the most of Diggs.
Okay.
And then it goes AJ Brown and then Devontae Smith. But I'm way over the field on Devontae Smith at 23%.
Okay.
And Devontae Smith is going to be less owned. So AJ Brown, I'll be double the field, and Devontae Smith, I'll be 4 times the field.
That's the thing. Like if you do play Justin Watson, for example, you can make a lot of lineups work.
Yeah.
You could play like Diggs and AJ Brown in the same lineup without a lot of effort, I think.
Yeah, it's definitely doable. It's sort of going to be the only issue I have with this is it's going to be like the same build for everybody. You know what I mean?
Okay.
Everybody who does do it is going to have like the same thing because it's so hard to spend up. But I still think that I think there's merit in doing it, and maybe like leaving 200 on defense. Just any sort of little differentiator you can make. Not that everyone's going to have it, but if they do, that's the way they're going to do it, in my opinion. So I'm trying to find little variations off of it. All right, let's talk about tight ends. Sheets, you start us off with what you like at tight end.
So my highest owned tight end is not Trey McBride. My highest owned tight end is actually Evan Ingram. Just kind of the way it worked out. But I'm going to be upping that because I definitely want to get more of Travis Kelce for all the reasons that I mentioned before. This is a must win or whatever. I think this is a must flex spot for Mahomes and crew. You know what I mean? Like they're supposed to win the game. They've been pretty miserable offensively in the last couple of weeks, whatever. I think this could be like a really, really big game for Kelce, for example. So I currently have Ingram the highest, and then, like I said, and then Kelce. McBride is obviously like an amazing play, but can't play every bit of chalk out there, right? So that's where I'm going to probably fade a little bit.
Gotcha. I think I'm starting to really like your take on this Chiefs situation, and I think what I like about it also is if you want to run it back, you do have a natural run back, and and Adams and Jacobs. So I think it makes a lot of sense. How about you, Rody, for tight ends?
Yeah, let me get over here. Yeah, tight ends. I really want to get more Kelce too. I told someone before this show that I need to get more Kelce, and they're like, he's really priced up, hard to get. I was like, I feel like he's gonna smash today too. So I'm really gonna have to try to force in a little bit more of him. Other guys I do like a Kincaid, and that another piece in that Eagles-Bills game that, like I said, I want to get some pieces in. Dalton Schultz, I do like in that Houston game. Maybe you're debating on Nico or you're debating on Tank Dell, but Schultz is another guy. Don't forget about him in Houston, kind of lower owned guy, good red zone threat for them. Njoku gets a lot of targets for Cleveland, even with the no Watson or anything like that, but he's priced down at 4-1, or not too bad of a price at 4-1. Kyle Pitts, another guy. I'm hoping, he steps up and has a bigger game again. A 4K. I want to take some shots on that. K. Dotton at 3-2 in that Tampa Bay Indy game. I like mix and match him. Also don't mind a little Tyler Higbee at 3-5 to get a little cheaper. Just throwing some Millie dart shots at him or $3 lineup stuff at him. And that's kind of in a little bit of Ingram at 4-2. I like that too. So these are just different options from the Trey McBride. Obviously, he's looking at like 40% chalk right now. I mean, he gets a ton of volume and work, but like, I definitely like these other guys, and I think there's a lot of upside to these other guys as well. So,
So I've got an interesting couple takes at tight end. This is one place I'm definitely getting a little bit different, and I'm going to be way over the field on a couple of guys. Who has the most targets of any tight end in one football game this season? It's David Njoku with the quarterback he's with right now with DTR, and they are facing the worst team in football against the tight end position by a pretty decent margin. So I have no idea why this is not affecting projections and everything. Njoku is also the only tight end coming into the game with 5 consecutive double-digit scoring performances. I am completely on board with David Njoku. I have him as my highest owned tight end. My other one is also going to be a very low owned one, and maybe not. Maybe people, no, it's going to happen. I think Taysom Hill is an awesome play. I'm sorry. I partly have the Atlanta thing. I love him as a run back. Atlanta, has trouble stopping the pass and the run. Okay, Taysom Hill is gonna have some opportunities. I'm gonna use Taysom Hill as a big time run back there. It's a little expensive, but I think it's been justified. Dalton Kincaid is the other one that I have the same ownership basically as I do of Hill, and the one I'm totally willing to speculate. Remember, the one guy who seemed to have success when it was Kenny Pickett at quarterback is Pat Freiermuth, who's back in our lives at 2,900 this week. I really like him, and then I really like K. Dotton. I will have, and then look, I'll get to some McBride because I can play him with these guys and not have to worry about the ownership. I will have a lot of double tight end lineups. The only thing that Sheets has sort of turned me on to and that I've sort of been going through in my head throughout the day is, doesn't this seem like a good spot for like the get right Chiefs thing? Maybe the 3 or 4 touchdowns to Kelsey where you just feel like an idiot. Why didn't we play him against Vegas? I think this is right. So I'm going to have to shift my ownership a little bit to get at least, over the field on Kelsey at the very, very least. And maybe that's not even nearly enough. So I love that call, Sheets. All right. Let's talk about some defenses. Wait, no, Brody, you jump in first on defenses.
All right, yeah, defense is a little bit tricky this week. We don't really have those cheap defenses. 2,600 on DraftKings, our lowest one. Which you don't mind it. It's the Texans. Jacksonville has struggled in games, but we like Jacksonville today. But I mean, take shots at it. They're cheap, but I mean, they're the cheapest one. But I mean, if you're gonna pay up, I don't mind even grabbing the Chiefs at 3-1 is probably my favorite. The Pats at 3-2. You got, if you want to spend up to the Browns, you got 3-8 against Denver. Denver's looked better in the previous week, but the Browns defense, I think, is one of the best in the league, and you're getting them at about 3,800. Titans at 3,400 are another option that I don't mind. And there might be one more. I said the Jags at 3K, right? Jags they're okay defense at 3K. But I like that game to stack for options, but I don't mind playing defense. They throw a lot of turnovers, a lot of plays, a lot of plays ran. So turnover potential, picks, pick sixes, anything can happen. So those are the defense I'm taking a shot at this week.
Makes sense. I actually have the Texans just because, again, they were the cheapest. So they're going to end up being one of my most popular, just the way the defenses work this week. I love the Steelers defense, and I like the Cleveland defense. But I'm sorry, I like the Cleveland defense, but I don't think I need to spend all the way up there. I think playing the Broncos on the other side of that game is totally viable. I know it sounds weird. We're recommending Broncos defense at 3,200. Didn't think that was going to happen this year. Chiefs, Saints, Patriots, and then just a little bit of a semi hedge, but also getting a little of the Bills and Eagles at cheap cheap defenses with some upside against, especially on the Eagles side, where you got occasionally you just get the really bad game out of Allen and you could be there. But what Chief said, maybe about the stack in KC is exactly how I feel about Buffalo this week. And by the way, I like Buffalo I don't know why I do. I think the spread is ridiculous that they're only 3-point underdogs. I still like them to win the game. But I honestly, I just think they're going to come out and put their best effort, and that's going to be throwing like crazy. And it also is going to have some opportunity for the Eagles defense. So that's my sum up of defense. And I don't have any more than 20% of anyone cheats, so you'd be proud of me.
Yeah, if you went with getting 20%, if I just went my normal exposures, I'd be getting like 70% Kansas City. So I'm not doing that. The next top one I'd be getting was the Patriots, who you mentioned earlier. So I'm going to be reducing that as well. And that's really all I have to say. Those look like the best plays. I'm just going to get a little more random as far as.
Yep. And even though we talked some stacks, I think we could finish up with a few stacks here. I'm going to be for me, it's really a lot about just playing this Eagles-Bills game and trying to get there. I want to get some more of the LA, Arizona, and I want to get some more of KC. I also think the Indy and Tampa Bay game, those are the ones that stand out. I did want to point out that, and I thought JM did a nice job when he pointed this out in a couple of different shows he was on this week. I really think that it's interesting that Pittsburgh, and there's just everybody's so cheap in Pittsburgh and Cincinnati outside of Chase. And these teams give up the 4th and 5th most yards per game. Now, they don't give up that many actual points, but I just wanted to throw that out there for DraftKings. You can get some PPR stuff out of guys like Deontay Johnson and stuff. Maybe you just skip the quarterbacks and do like a secondary stack with that game. But I think it's kind of an interesting one with a 35 total, which is kind of amazing to see. But I do have some of that as well. How about you, Rody, for stacks, and then we'll get into final hot takes for the week, I guess.
Yeah, I like that Saints Atlanta game a lot today. Like the Jacksonville stack. I want to get a KC stack now, and I like the Tampa Bay Colts game a lot this week. So a couple of those dome games I really like. Obviously, KC's playing Vegas, so that's a dome as well, right? They're at the Vegas. Yeah. Mm-hmm. So yeah, that's the dome games I talk about. So I feel like I need to get a couple more KC stacks is probably what I want to add to my list. So,
How about you, Sheets? Any other stacks worth mentioning that we didn't discuss?
No, not really. I mean, Kansas City, like I mentioned, then the guys that we talked about, Indianapolis, Atlanta, Tampa, New Orleans, Jacksonville. I didn't get to any Tennessee stacks. But yeah, maybe JM and he's been on. I've been watching him this week as well, and maybe he's just right. You just take the top talented teams, the Philly, Buffalo. You know what I mean, and just let it just watch them do their thing. You know what I mean? That's pretty reasonable. But yeah, that's pretty much all I got.
Yep. All right. I'll throw out a couple of hot takes for the week. One is that I guess I already threw it out that there will be a player with sub 10 fantasy points in the winning lineup this week, and there will be at least 2 players from the Eagles and Bills game.
So this my hot take is that Derrick Henry scores 11 fantasy points and wins $1 million for somebody. So for max tilt, that would be.
He ends up being like the running back 3 on the whole slate or something, and it was 11 fantasy points.
Exactly.
All right, Rody. Anything hot take?
No, I can't follow those up with anything. I got nothing.
That's pretty funny. That's pretty good.
You guys were great today, man. There's some good stuff out of here today.
All right, Rody. Then take us out of here, buddy.
All right, guys. Have a good one. Don't forget to hit that like button, subscribe, check us out. Bobby's got all exposures up in the Discord, so make sure you join the premium Discord. And as always, hope you have a good day. Let's get it.
Let's get it.